our home, I think, when I was probably 7 or 8, and we were glad when he left because he just wasn't patient with us as children. So we were all afraid of him, and afraid in a destructive way rather than constructive. But when we got together and when we had children of our own, and when I saw the role of the father, I saw and I see now how really important it is, and how much investment has to be made in the children,
and how much you missed,
and how much. Thank you. That was my main point. Thank you. And how much I actually missed out on and still do. And the only way because that can never be made up for me, brothers and sisters, even though my mother did the best that she could, I can never get that back apart from my connection with Allah and my true father. However, the best way of me actually one of the best ways of me filling that gap as well is by watching my children go on and having what I didn't have. And that's generating and that's strengthening and changing that life cycle.
Okay, all praises due to Allah. I just wrote down here, the knowledge of the life cycle means we know what's coming next.
Yeah, okay.
When we don't know what's coming next, that leads to our frustration sometimes. So we can be impatient, and I fall short. We're still studying the life cycle. By Allah's grace and mercy.
Yeah,
and once we get to know that sequence, then that can help us to quell that's in our hearts and in our minds sometimes. You know? What's coming around the corner? What?
Yeah, and it goes back to responsibility and parental responsibility as well, because we may be parents, but we'll always be children as well. I'm always going to be my mother's child. I'm always going to be God's child. That won't change. However, I become a parent. In my growth and development, I become a parent. What kind of parent I am is determined by what environment I'm living in, how I've been taught, how I've been reared as a child, how the kind of circles that I move in now as an adult, whether it's productive or whether it's not. My environment, the society, all of those things have an impact. But we know that with our men, we know as mothers, sisters, brothers and sisters, as mothers, we know that there's never really a dispute over whether the child is mine or not, because we know that we've given birth to them, unless there's some dispute or something in the hospital about babies being switched. But in general, we always know. For the male, it's very different because sometimes they have to go and fight for parental responsibility.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Particularly, but the male only has to do that if he hasn't started out right. Because remember,
can you come a bit closer, please?
Right, remember, there's life cycles, and in having life cycles, there's a specific system and specific ways that Allah God wants us to do things. One is we go through courtship and everything else, but you get married. Then we go on and have our children. But we don't necessarily do that in this society. We go on and have our children, and then we bite our fingernails in intense regret because we didn't get married. So when the relationship breaks down, the female says, I don't even know him. I don't know why he's saying that. Then you have to go to court as fathers in order to prove that you are the parent of the child. So the male has to go back and fight for parental responsibility. That's if he wants to take responsibility of his children. If they don't, then they just leave it, and then they get chased by the CSA. So
if we don't fight for parental responsibility, then the sister fights us to put parental responsibility on us.
Yeah, of course, because it's about...
But isn't that just being, averse?
Because it is, but it's but that's based on pain. And being in pain and being disappointed, what that does is that causes us to lash out at one another. We're children, we're babies. We're not only babies or children to God and our mothers and fathers, but we're babies because we haven't been shown how to grow and mature. And because, in the Qur'an, it says old men for counsel and young men for war. We don't have many counselors unless we actively get involved in an organisation that has elders or our grandparents or our parents or something are steering us. Daniel, we were having a session, a mediation session with Daniel yesterday and some lady.
That's our big son.
That's our big son, Daniel. And she came round. She was really practical, and we were talking about ways of how to deal with different emotions and stuff. Because we can't only think that we can solve all problems. We got to reach out and we got to look to see what kind of services or opportunities are around us in order for us to get the help and the guidance that we need. So anyway, the woman said to Daniel, what's changed with you? And he said, well, When I was in Jamaica, my grandmother and my great-grandmother spoke to me, and those are the ones that made a difference to my attitude. And I'm like, look at how much influence we have over our children, but we've got to get involved. Anyway, fathers have to sometimes prove that they are the actual biological father of the child because they didn't marry the mother. If they married the mother, then by law, legally, it's assumed that you are the father because the two of you are together. So if you're not the father, then something's just wrong with your situation. However, whether a father accepts responsibility or not, it's partly the male's responsibility why our community is in the condition that it's in. And a lot of the time, mothers are blamed. We look at just the mothers. Well, where's your mother? Why's your mother? It tends to be the mothers. It's like even with.
Hold on, you just said that it's the responsibility of the father why our community is in the condition that they're in. I think that needs expanding, really.
Partly. I was going on to explain it. I'm going on to explain it.
Okay.
Partly responsibility because every single person. Let me just say it now. Okay, I'll explain it for you now. Within a community and within a society, everyone has their own function. Everyone has a role and a function. And if someone doesn't do their role, then that means that somebody else has to go on and do it. I didn't understand and I'll explain it from my own personal situation. I didn't understand the role of a father because I didn't have one. So because my father wasn't there, I didn't have the proper respect and regard for fatherhood that I should have done, which meant that to a degree that dependent on my attitude and dependent I'm gravitating again, Anna. Dependent on my attitude and dependent on whether I'm getting along with my husband or not will determine how much influence or how much input I allow him to have within the lives of our children. Because sometimes as women, we think that because we didn't have a father and we're okay, that means that my children will be okay if I keep them away from their father, or if their father doesn't get involved in their lives. But that's not necessarily so. It's the same as with a mother. If a father is rearing the children by himself and the mother isn't involved, that's the child is missing an aspect of their own life and their own person and their own identity, because it's from both parents that the children gain a sense of self and a sense of self-respect and self-esteem, and also love and knowledge and understanding of themselves. However, it gets wider than that because children only concentrate on their own personal family and their own environment up until they're 5, 6, 7, and then they start looking within the community, and then they start looking at other people, at having friends and looking at other people's families, how when they go to their friends' houses, how their families work and everything else. Then when they become teenagers, parents have even less influence on the children, then their peers have more influence. And sometimes even your friends' mothers have more influence on the children than we actually do. So it's about us learning how to use every aspect of our society in order for our children to become more whole, more holistic. Does that answer the question?
I guess.
Oh, okay. Right. Now, in moving on, God said, now, what we're talking about stopping the killing, and we're talking about stopping the killing, not just from the guns and the knives and everything else, brothers and sisters, but from the destructive way that our families have been working, or the dysfunctional ways that our families have been for the longest time, because we haven't been taught about the science of family, about understanding family. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Now, going to the Bible, in the book of Ephesians...
Can I ask you what this title is called for this week?
It's called... The Price for Peace.
The Price for Peace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right now. Yeah, Price for Peace. Okay. In the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 4. And God says, and you fathers. He said, and you fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Which means the male has a very specific role and function, according to God, okay? They have a very specific role and function within the nurturing and within the training and within the development of the children. Unfortunately, in this society, because the family's been broken down, the man's actually been told that his involvement isn't really important, so you can go because we're not going to miss you. Or, it's, well, I don't care whether you're here or not. However, for the child and for the growth and development of the child, the father has an aspect or an input that we may not necessarily see. I watch Elijah. I watch Elijah now. Elijah's 10. Elijah's one of our other sons. He's 10 years old, and